I'm Del Acosta. I'm an architectural historian and a resident of Tampa's Hyde Park, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.
Hello, I'm Linda Saul-Sena. Welcome to Culture Vultures. It is my pleasure today to introduce my guest, Del Acosta, longtime friend, architectural historian, and Hyde Park resident. Welcome, Del.
Well, thank you, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think we should talk about where this whole thing began, which was when many decades ago, when you and I were first at the Planning Commission, and you were given the task, or you created the task of revitalizing a very rundown neighborhood, Hyde Park.
Well, at that time, Hyde Park was a throwaway neighborhood. This was before even the construction of the Crosstown Expressway, but it was on the drawing boards. And the question was, what do we do with this neighborhood? Should we demolish it as urban renewal, although urban renewal programs were over with? Or should we try to convert it into a golf course, which was one of the proposals, if you recall?
This was like 1975?
This was about 75, 74, 75, yes. And the Crosstown was already a reality, but it was beginning its construction stages. But the massive demolition was beginning to occur, and there were some people that felt that it should go even greater, just tear everything down. I was right out of school and, of course, quite young. And the academic programs and historic preservation were already developed and being taught. I came up with the very novel and outrageous idea of why don't we restore some of these homes? And quite honestly, if you recall, you were there, that was met with a lot of skepticism. But it was kind of like, well, what else can we do? You know, what have we got to lose? And fortunately, there were a number of young people moving into the community, and some old-timers. It was both ends of the spectrum. The old-timers were trying to save their neighborhood, but they felt it was a losing battle. And the young people saw it as an inexpensive place to live with a lot of infrastructure already in place.
Now, my memory was that there were some slumlords who had bought some of the great old houses and some of the smaller houses and had chopped them up into one room, like rooming houses, and people would pay for them by the week.
Well, we had, which were originally grand homes, and today are grand homes, but for about 40 or 50 years, there were rooming houses or cut up into apartments, what have you. There's one particular house on Oregon, I'm not going to tell you which one it is there used to be 5 or 6 mailboxes and a Coke machine on the front porch.
Wow. Wow, what an evolution.
I wish I had a photograph of the before and after.
That would be dramatic.
And that would be dramatic, because a lot of people don't realize that Hyde Park was on the verge of complete annihilation. It could have been a throwaway neighborhood.
Well, you are the director of current planning at the Hillsborough County Planning Commission, and I think the assignment was, what can you do with this? And you worked on something called neighborhood housing services, remember?
Yes. The goal is to identify the opportunities, and that's where I believe that you were also involved in that, where a team of people went out and photographed. And we started to identify those structures that could be rehabilitated, which was a large number. And again, there was a lot of skepticism. Bungalow Terrace was one of those neighborhoods. There was a proposal which has got to be one of Tampa's most charming neighborhoods. It's a hidden jewel. For those of you that have never seen it, you've got to see it. To just demolish it. And we identified it as an area of potential.
And also Gorey School. Remember, the school board thought there'd never be young families in this old neighborhood, and they should get rid of the elementary school and create a parking lot there for the junior high school a block away.
Well, supposedly, the governmental bureaucracy, both locally and Tallahassee, stated that you couldn't improve an old school because you didn't have enough land to justify the investment. If you recall, and I think you were involved in this, we had to go to Tallahassee and lobby for spending state monies for rehabilitation of historic properties that didn't meet the criteria of acreage.
Oh, right. It was all about parking lots. It was a very suburban mentality. And remember the banks?
Yeah, and of course the banks had redlined Hyde Park.
And for those who don't know, explain what redlining is.
Redlining, and this occurred throughout the United States. This was not unique to Tampa or Hillsborough County or Hyde Park. Throughout the United States, neighborhoods where redline is not being viable for public financing, for bank loans.
So that's why all of the servicemen coming back after World War II bought homes in the suburbs, because you could get those loans, you know, veterans loans out in the suburbs, but not in the older parts of the city.
Well, I don't know the name of the act, but it was part of the massive programs for returning servicemen. The low-cost loans were only for new construction.
Ah.
So that was even more awesome. You could not return to the neighborhood that you grew up in, because unless it was a neighborhood where you could build a new home, you could not get VA financing on anything but new construction.
So we were these young planners and wrote a plan.
Running against the grain of everything.
Absolutely. With the novel idea that people would actually want to move into an old neighborhood and buy an old house and fix it up.
Remember, Linda, we said we couldn't trust anybody over 40?
I remember that you could buy those houses for $15,000, yes. And I'm frustrated that I didn't.
Well, or even less.
Right.
$15,000 was one of the nicer homes during that period of time. I mean, there were homes that were almost on the verge of, because they were small and considered uninhabitable. And people were buying them and investing in them. It was difficult, but it was a thing that you could do. And within a very short time, but we must remember, let's go back, that there were people that were very committed to the redevelopment of Hyde Park.
Absolutely.
Some of the people living on Bayshore Boulevard, some of the older families that had their roots there, that against all odds continued to reinvest in the neighborhood. And they provided the ammunition that the younger people needed to go against the grain, lobby City Hall, lobby county government, and lobby the state government, and even at the federal level, to change the banking regulations.
Which was a game changer.
You know, these are the unsung heroes of our community.
So the city managed to get code enforcement to get some people, and well, the first thing you had to get were the loans so people could fix up their properties. And then we saved the elementary school. And just across the street from the elementary school was the old Friday morning musicale building.
Which is still there and as viable as ever.
But the good news is it wasn't torn down.
Oh, that wasn't torn down. There were a lot of important structures that were saved. Even where Hyde Park Village is today, that was a commercial area.
I remember it from when I was a kid.
So, and it was a commercial area because that's where the streetcar line went from downtown, down Rome to the Bayshore onto the Ballast Point. So it had its purpose for being a commercial area. And the city limits up until the 50s was Howard Avenue.
That was the westerly limit for the city of Tampa. Amazing.
You know, I think that was became part of the city on the western side in the early to late 50s.
Well, one of the projects that you've been involved with for at least a decade is Swan Pond. Will you chat about that a minute?
Well, Swan Pond is really a series of putting the park back in Hyde Park. Okay, it started with Kate Jackson Park, which was a park for a long time. I think the city acquired it in the 1930s. That block was the original home site of Kate Jackson.
When I was a kid, I went to a rec center there in a wonderful decaying old mansion.
Yeah, actually, its official name is Anderson Playground.
Okay.
And then the building is known as the Kate Jackson Center, but everybody calls it Kate Jackson Park, so just for clarification.
So it went from being this wonderful decaying old mansion to this hideous sort of Quonset hut type building, and then what happened?
Well, you know, it was a chain link fence. The police would lock it down every night. It was really almost on the verge of being a needle park, and the surrounding area reflected that. It was a neighborhood initiative. I must admit that I really wasn't very much involved in the original planning of that, but I jumped in to support it. But the renovation of that park from being a chain link park with a metal industrial building to an urban asset did a lot to change the complexion of that section of Hyde Park and the surrounding area. The success of that led to the redevelopment of Burns Park. Originally was just a sand lot. And that success led to developing what was originally a retention pond. It was built to contain the runoff from the development of Hyde Park Village and primarily the Crosstown Expressway. And it was unsightly, it was somewhat unhealthy water traveling into the bay and unusable for people. It's not completed yet, but it'll be one of, hopefully, will be a chain of parks in Hyde Park. Again, as I say, we want to put the park back in Hyde Park, and it's just not these isolated parks, but then the trees, the connecting it, so that it's not only a place where you have the destinations of these parks, but pleasant walking and bicycling from park to park and throughout the neighborhood.
So tell me how the neighborhood has gone about initiating these changes.
Well, it started with one house at a time, and then one block at a time. Out of that, you began to see the old infrastructure even became more visible as being antiquated. This first major public effort was to rebrand the community with the street signs.
That's right.
And it seems like a small thing, and individually it is small, but collectively it provided a thread that created a sense of place.
And that was an initiative by the local civic association.
Two civic associations. The original civic association was Historic Hyde Park Incorporated. Old Hyde Park is what they call themselves. They did the first section, and then the second section was done by the Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association. Today, I can't give you the number of blocks, but a good section of the locally designated historic district has this unifying sign program that emphasizes it's being a historic area.
And the money for that was primarily raised by those civic associations.
Yes, selling tickets at $25 to $35 a head.
For home tours?
For home tours, barbecues, whatever.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of sales. I would say it really was a 15-year effort.
So it's a total grassroots initiative.
It's a grassroots initiative that any community can undertake.
Well, it's really subtle because you don't think about street signs that much, but they all are a uniform design. They're good looking, and it makes you feel like you're someplace distinct and special.
Yes.
Which you are.
And, you know, we're looking at, there are sections of the historic district that have historic lighting. Some don't. That's something that we're talking about, so that there's a consistent lighting throughout the area, entryways into the community, the little things, the curbs, the granite curbs, the brick streets. There are significant sections of Hyde Park that do have brick streets, and then there are a lot of sections of Hyde Park that the brick streets are hidden by asphalt.
We're going to continue that conversation as soon as we take a break. Thank you.
Okay.
Change your life. Learn TV and internet video production skills at TBCN in Tampa. Become a skilled video producer quickly and inexpensively. Learn audio, editing, lighting, and camera basics. Produce multi-camera videos for TV, the internet, business, or pleasure.
Welcome to my live call-in show on Tampa Bay Community Network. You too can learn to produce and star in your own video programming, or you can have TBCN staff do it for you.
Call TBCN at 813-977-5200 today and change your life. Visit our website at tbcn.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Welcome back. I'm Linda Saul-Sena with Culture Vultures, and today I'm chatting with my friend Della Costa about brick streets in Hyde Park. So we're talking about the idea of the quality of the experience going down a street.
Well, you know, brick streets have the scale of a human. You can pick up a brick street. You can't pick up asphalt from an asphalt street. So it's all about scale. It's all about interaction. It's all about aesthetics. Now, I'm not saying that all streets in a community should be brick, but I am saying that the community doesn't need to be totally asphalted over. A runway needs to be asphalt and concrete, obviously. But where we live, where we want to walk, we want to ride our bicycles, and yes, bicycles. A true bicyclist like brick streets because they give an additional challenge. Brick streets just have that scale and are a natural calming device. So they're aesthetically pretty appealing, they have a natural calming device, and they're the scale of a human being.
And aren't they also set in sand so that water can percolate through?
Yes, and then you have the advantage of being environmentally more sensitive. I'm not going to say because it's never been proven they're green because they've never been tested for green. But the logic of it is they do permeate. And also the lifespan is much greater. Even the time for rehabilitation of a brick street is significantly greater than it is for an asphalt street. We have brick streets in Tampa that have been laid 60, 70, 80 years old, never have had maintenance. You can't say that about many asphalt streets.
Right, right.
All streets need maintenance. I'm not saying brick streets are maintenance-free, but I am saying that they have a level of maintenance that's less than the alternatives.
Well, I know that we originally had brick streets in Hyde Park, and then I believe the city paved over them.
Well, for example, Swan Avenue. Everybody knows where the Swan is in Hyde Park, and also Howard Avenue. Underneath the asphalt, there is still brick. Original historic brick streets. It's just a matter of the public involvement and public desire to do the rehabilitation. Other communities have done that, not, I'm going to say all over the United States, but we don't even leave Florida. Communities in the state of Florida have rehabilitated brick streets and even bought new brick and then bought historic brick.
I remember you and I took a trip to Orlando, and if 51% of the neighbors on a block agreed to kick in some money to match with the city money, they would scrape the asphalt off the top and bring back the brick streets. And then people would advertise that they were living on a brick street.
And that program proved to be very successful. As you know, the city of Tampa sold its surface historic bricks so that the city of Orlando and Winter Park, it was both communities, could implement their very successful Brick Street program. And today you can see it. I mean,
well, actually, I have to say I was on city council at the time, and we found out that we were doing that and said, wait, that is crazy. Why are we selling our bricks?
hopefully, from what I understand, there is a significant inventory that the city has of bricks.
I hope we do. We should. I'm not holding my breath.
Well,
but
I hope they're there, but we still have a lot of bricks covered by asphalt.
And we could scrape it off.
And we could scrape it off, and we would have an environmentally appropriate material. And the big concern, especially in residential areas, is speeding. Brick streets are a naturally calming device. You don't need humps. You don't need a lot of signage. It just naturally, first of all, the car naturally slows down a little bit, but also psychologically, because the scale is smaller, you slow down.
That's
your mind doesn't, you don't know it, but your mind knows that it's a slowing down process.
Well, I remember once there was a woman at a zoning hearing who was talking about walking on a brick street. And she said, we live in a modest house, but when I walk down this street, I feel like it's a carpet, an oriental rug that's spread along the street, and I'm walking down this wonderful carpet. And I thought that was a great analogy.
Well, how many articles have you read about communities when they talk about the beautiful asphalt streets?
Never.
And you have read about cobblestone streets, brick streets, on and on. So, I mean, that's it. When people visit other communities in the areas of a neighborhood that they visit, it's a collection of things, but one of the things, and one of the big unifying elements, is your brick streets, your curbing, the granite curbing. Sometimes it's other metals or other stones, your street lighting, your canopies of trees, flowering trees in some communities, in areas where you have vistas of water, which we have in Hyde Park with Bay Shore, other communities where you do have mountains and hills. All those things make a community and give it its uniqueness.
Absolutely. Well, you taught me the phrase street furniture. Could you explain that?
Well, street furniture are those public elements that make up a community. This is your public area. It could be a bench. I think a bench is probably the easiest one to relate to, but it could be your street signs. It could be a structure, an arbor, or just an object to look at, a piece of sculpture. But the street furniture is also your paving material, your curbing, your street itself, getting back to the brick streets. Any of these things, your signage is part of your street furniture. Individually, they're evaluated on their own, but collectively, it's like getting dressed, whether it's a man or a woman. You want everything to come together, and street furniture needs to bring the community together.
Well, I think that it's something that we really don't think about unless it's highlighted the way that you've just done. But then you start to notice it, and it makes such a psychological difference. You have an image to share of, I think is it Winter Park?
Well, this is in Winter Park, but this could be anywhere, where you have a light, but it provides light, but in a very attractive way, and it also has flowers in it. And it defines a community better than any sign. You know, it says a sense of place.
And a lot of signs say a lot of signs. It's sort of visual clutter.
Well, see, that's the other thing is you can put too many signs and then you don't see any signs. This is actually in Winter Park. This is a 4-lane road. But
wait a minute, that is beautiful.
Yes, okay, and it's 4 lanes plus a bikeway. But it carries a lot of traffic, but it's attractive. And it's part of a redevelopment area. And when the road was improved, a lot of private reinvestment occurred. People live along it and they enjoy it. It's become a place to have a business because it's attractive.
Well, Hyde Park is a great example of how having rules and investing in infrastructure really is reflected in the value of the property there.
Very much so. There's a number of people that have migrated to Tampa, let's say in less than 25 years ago, that find it unbelievable that Hyde Park was really a very marginal neighborhood 40 years ago. Truly marginal, where you had abandonment, you had structures being torn down, and you had the community scratching its head on what to do, to where today it's one of the most desirable communities in the Tampa Bay region. And this has been at one house at a time with a lot of public investment and public involvement.
You have to take credit for helping lead the charge. And could you tell us a bit about Cafe Con Tampa?
Well, Cafe Con Tampa started out with a very small group of residents from Hyde Park meeting on, there was a zoning case, and I can't even remember what case it was, and we were trying to figure out how to mobilize to have the type of community that we wanted. You know, we want street furniture, brick streets, continuing the rehabilitation of the individual structures, the schools to expand, really to be a community that's not only good for us as residents, but a community that the entire community can be proud of and can become part of the economic engine that's Tampa, Hillsborough County. So we started meeting, and after a while, we said, you know, this is just a gripe session and we need to learn more. And you were our very first guest when you were on Tampa City Council. And it was so informative and provided so much direction to us. Then we started meeting once a month. I mean, we continued to meet every week, but once a month we started to bring in a speaker. And that didn't last very long because once we realized that we could learn, we started having speakers every week. And at that point, originally we were called the Land Use Committee, then we changed it to the acronym LUC, Listen, Understand, and Communicate, which was awkward.
Yes.
And a little bit over a year ago, Bill Carlson, who's one of our members, he's the president of Tucker Hall Advertising in Tampa, rebranded for us is Cafe Con Tampa. And it's a community forum. And we have, when I say community, it's really the Tampa Bay area because we've had people come from Pinellas, Pasco, and Hernando County where we have speakers all over the place. And we talk about everything from healthcare to local politics.
So do people have to join to do this? What is the drill? How does one
show up on? Well, we're on Facebook and Twitter. That's the best way to get our schedule.
Cafe Con Tampa.
Cafe Con Tampa.
So you can have cafe con leche, a little Cuban toast.
Yeah, it's, you know, a glass of water, scrambled eggs, or a full omelet, whatever you feel like, and have the opportunity to hear a speaker on a pretty much one-to-one basis because the size of the restaurant, we kind of max out at 40. But so it's still intimate.
I've very much enjoyed it when I've come. The hard part is it starts at 8 a.m. on a Friday morning, and it's over by about 9:30.
Yes.
But the good news is that you really get a broad spectrum of individuals. Could you describe that?
Well, we have everything from elected officials. You first came as an elected official. We have people from healthcare community talking about different aspects. We're going to have a speaker very soon talk about Medicare.
And you don't have to live in Hyde Park.
We've had people come from throughout the community.
That is just so
And actually,
great.
we welcome people from other communities because we all share in the same interests and essentially, if you can say, quote unquote, the same community problems. Transportation is a community-wide problem.
Absolutely.
Street furniture is community-wide.
Protecting trees.
Protecting trees. When we talk about healthcare, that's a community-wide issue. And kind of a thread that we've just started recently that everybody's very interested in is U.S.-Cuba relations. And
that's fun.
And the history that Tampa has played since the Spanish-American War.
There's so much of a rich background to the neighborhoods and the communities. And there's also kind of an exciting future.
Yes, and we want to brand ourselves as unique, but still a critical part of Tampa, Hillsborough County, and the United States of America.
So looking forward, what are some other initiatives?
Well, I think our next initiative after Swan Pond, and Swan Pond, as you know, is under construction right now.
Yes, and we have some pictures to
So
share.
in 2 months, it should be finished. Then I think we always should look towards the future. And I'm just speaking for myself. I think the community is going through this discussion now. But we would like to see the improvement of Swan Avenue so that it takes on the look of the park being in Hyde Park.
Did you come up with that line? That's a great line.
That I have to say I came up with. I can't take credit for everything, but it is, and it goes back to the City Beautiful movement at the turn of the 19th century, where you try to provide the country and the city. And that's where the name Hyde Park came from. We have Hyde Park, England, Hyde Park, Chicago, and then we have Hyde Park, Tampa, and there's several in New York State.
I love that. That's great.
But it's been, that's always what I say. We've got to have the park back in Hyde Park. And then I would like to see threading these parks together so you can start at any one and walk to the next one, ultimately end up at Bayshore Boulevard, or be a guest at a downtown hotel, walk up the Bayshore, and permeate through the neighborhood.
Well, now that summer has kicked in, at least heat-wise, I really resent being in sunlight without some shade, and the trees make such a dramatic difference.
Well, I mean, they are environmentally best for our air and environment. They provide shade. They provide shelter for wildlife. As you said, I live in Hyde Park. I'm amazed at the amount of birds that I have in my yard.
Isn't that fabulous?
Yes, and they're nesting in there.
It has been such a pleasure to work with you over these years on a whole slew of different projects, and I look forward to the ones that we cook up in the future. And thank all of you for joining us today on Culture Vultures. See you next time.